Put the card down, ma'am. Officer Daniel Mercer's voice was calm, but the command sliced through the luxury boutique so sharply that every conversation around Maya Reynolds seemed to disappear at once. Maya looked at the black credit card resting beneath Mercer's hand on the glass counter, then slowly raised her eyes to meet his. 10 minutes earlier, she had been choosing a gift for her mother. Now strangers were watching her as though they had already been invited to decide whether she belonged there. Behind the register, Claire Donovan stood stiffly beside the payment terminal, her expression caught somewhere between suspicion and certainty. "We believe that card was stolen," she said. The words traveled farther than they needed to. A woman examining handbags several feet away stopped moving. A man near the entrance glanced over his shoulder. Even the sales associate arranging scarves along the opposite wall suddenly became fascinated with what was happening at the register. Maya felt every pair of eyes without turning toward them. She had learned years ago that humiliation had a strange temperature. It began hot, somewhere beneath the ribs, then slowly turned cold when you realized everyone around you was waiting to see how you would react. Maya did not give them a reaction. She stood straight in her charcoal gray coat, one hand resting beside her purse, her breathing controlled. "My name is on the card," she said. "You have my driver's license. The names match." Claire folded her arms. The transaction was flagged. "For verification," Maya replied. "That is not the same thing as reporting a stolen card." Mercer looked from Maya to Claire, then back again. He had been inside the store less than 4 minutes, yet something in his posture suggested the investigation was already over. Maya noticed it. The customers noticed it. Maybe Mercer himself did not. "We'll figure that out," he said. "Until then, you're staying right here." Maya's phone vibrated against the counter. The screen illuminated for only a moment. Thomas Whitmore, private banking. Her eyes dropped toward the name. So did Mercer's. Maya reached for the phone, but Mercer lifted his hand between her and the device. "Leave it. That's my bank calling." I said leave it. Silence settled over the boutique. Imagine standing in a room filled with people who know nothing about you, yet somehow watching suspicion move from one face to another as though accusation itself were evidence. Maya could have raised her voice. She could have demanded a supervisor. Instead, she looked directly at Mercer and spoke with a composure that seemed to irritate him more than anger would have. "Officer, call the number printed on the back of the card." Mercer gave a faint, dismissive smile. People using stolen cards usually have explanations ready. Maya stared at him for a second, not because the sentence surprised her, but because of how easily he had said it. And innocent people usually expect police officers to verify facts. Claire shifted behind the register. Mercer's expression hardened. "Ma'am, don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Maya glanced around the store. Marble floors, soft golden lighting, designer handbags displayed like museum pieces. 27 minutes earlier, the place had seemed elegant. Now it felt strangely small. Her phone vibrated again. Thomas Whitmore. Mercer ignored it. Maya didn't. Something in her expression changed, almost imperceptibly. The embarrassment was still there, but beneath it was something steadier. "Patience. Before you decide what happens next," she said quietly, "you should answer that call." Mercer looked at the phone, then at Maya. "Nobody from a bank is changing what's happening here." Maya's voice became softer. "You might want to be certain about that." Through the boutique's tall front windows, headlights swept across the polished floor as a black sedan stopped at the curb. Mercer never turned around. Claire didn't notice either. Maya did. A man in a navy overcoat stepped from the rear passenger door, looked through the glass, and immediately began walking toward the entrance. Mercer reached toward his radio, still convinced the woman standing before him was the person who needed explaining. Maya watched the approaching figure and said nothing more. The front door opened. 27 minutes earlier, Maya Reynolds had stepped through the boutique doors with nothing on her mind except her mother. The store sat along one of the city's most polished shopping streets, where tall windows reflected afternoon traffic and carefully dressed displays promised that everything inside had been selected for people who understood quality. Warm light spilled across pale marble floors. Soft music drifted above rows of handbags, jewelry, and neatly arranged accessories. Maya paused just inside the entrance and checked the time on her phone. She had promised herself she would not spend more than 30 minutes shopping. Her mother's birthday dinner started at 7, and Maya still needed to drive nearly 12 miles across town before rush hour thickened. She already knew what she wanted, something elegant, useful, and memorable enough to make her mother complain that she had spent too much money. The thought made Maya smile. Evelyn Reynolds had spent most of Maya's childhood insisting that expensive things mattered less than meaningful ones. She had worked long hours, saved carefully, and somehow made every birthday feel important even when money was tight. Maya had never forgotten that. Years later, after building a successful medical consulting practice and finally reaching a point where she could give her mother things they once only admired through store windows, Maya still approached every gift with the same question. Would this make her mother feel seen? "Good afternoon," a sales associate said from several feet away. Maya returned the greeting and began browsing. She wore a charcoal gray coat over a cream blouse and dark slacks, simple pearl earrings, and comfortable black shoes. Nothing about her demanded attention, and she preferred it that way. She moved slowly through the displays until she found a deep blue leather handbag with understated silver hardware. Blue had always been Evelyn's favorite color. Maya lifted it carefully, imagining her mother opening the box and immediately saying, "Maya, you should have saved your money." Her smile returned. Across the store, Claire Donovan noticed her. At first it was only a glance. Then another. Maya carried the handbag toward a mirror, and Claire moved closer. Maya examined the stitching, and Claire rearranged merchandise nearby that had already been perfectly arranged. Maya had experienced that kind of attention before. Sometimes it meant nothing. Sometimes it meant everything. She had learned not to assume which one until people showed her. Another customer, a white woman wearing a camel-colored coat, approached the register with several items. Claire greeted her warmly, processed the purchase, and handed back her card without hesitation. "Have a wonderful afternoon, Mrs. Patterson." The woman smiled and left. Maya approached next. "I would like this one, please." Claire looked at the handbag, then at Maya. Of course. Her smile was professional, although noticeably thinner now. She entered the purchase and announced the total. Maya opened her wallet and removed a black credit card. Claire's eyes lingered on it for half a second longer than necessary. Maya noticed. She said nothing. The card entered the terminal. A few seconds passed. Then a message appeared. "Additional verification required." Claire looked at the screen, then immediately looked at Maya. "Is there a problem?" Maya asked. The transaction did not go through normally. "What does it say?" Claire hesitated. "It requires verification." Maya nodded. There was nothing unusual about that. Large purchases occasionally triggered security checks, particularly when made somewhere she did not shop regularly. Her phone vibrated inside her purse almost immediately. She pulled it out and saw a notification from her bank asking whether she recognized the transaction. Maya tapped yes. "There," she said. "It should clear now." Claire did not rerun the card. Instead, her gaze shifted toward Maya's wallet. "May I see identification?" Maya felt the first quiet tightening in her chest. Still, she reached for her driver's license and placed it beside the card. Claire read the name carefully. Maya Reynolds. She compared it with the credit card. Same name. Same person. Everything that should have ended the question was sitting directly in front of her. Yet Claire did not return either card. She looked toward the back of the store, then lowered her voice. "I need to speak with my supervisor." Maya watched her walk away. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was not an automated notification. The name on the screen belonged to Thomas Whitmore, the private banking manager who had handled Maya's accounts for years. Maya looked toward Claire, who was now speaking urgently with another employee while glancing back at her. The beautiful blue handbag remained on the counter between them. Only minutes earlier, Maya had been imagining her mother's smile. Now she had the unmistakable feeling that the purchase was no longer what anyone in that store was thinking about. Claire returned to the register with a man wearing a dark suit and a silver name tag that identified him as the floor supervisor. His name was Mark Ellis, and the expression on his face told Maya that Claire had already given him a version of the situation before he had heard a single word from her. Mark looked at the black credit card, then at the driver's license beside it. "Ms. Reynolds, my associate tells me there is a problem with this transaction." Maya kept her voice even. "There was a verification request. My bank sent a notification to my phone. I confirmed the purchase. Your associate has not tried the card again." Mark glanced at Claire. Claire shifted her weight. The transaction looked suspicious. Maya waited. What exactly looked suspicious? Claire opened her mouth, but no answer came immediately. That hesitation changed the atmosphere. A question that should have had a simple explanation suddenly seemed much heavier. Mark cleared his throat. We sometimes have to take additional precautions with high-value purchases. Maya nodded toward the woman in the camel-colored coat who had just left the store carrying several shopping bags. I understand precautions. I am asking what made my purchase suspicious. Mark's eyes moved toward the front windows. Let us not make this confrontational. Maya almost smiled at the irony. She had not raised her voice. She had not insulted anyone. She had simply asked them to explain themselves, yet somehow the request for an explanation had become the confrontation. Then verify the card, she said. You have my identification. The name matches. My banking application shows the transaction. The bank is calling me right now. Her phone vibrated again against the glass counter. Thomas Whitmore. Claire stared at the screen. Who is that? My banking manager. Claire gave Mark a quick look. It lasted less than a second, but Maya saw it. Doubt should have entered the room at that moment. Instead, suspicion found another place to stand. Anyone can put a name into a phone, Claire said. Maya became completely still. Around them, the store had changed. Customers who had been browsing were now listening without pretending otherwise. A young sales associate near the jewelry display looked uncomfortable. An older man standing beside his wife whispered something and then fell silent. Maya could feel the attention collecting around her, turning a private banking verification into public theater. Imagine being asked for proof, providing it, then watching every piece of proof become another reason not to believe you. Maya unlocked her phone and opened her banking application. She turned the screen toward Mark. Her name appeared clearly above the account information, along with the pending purchase and the confirmation she had submitted. There, Maya said. You can verify everything without guessing. Mark barely looked. We cannot rely on information displayed on a customer's personal device. Then call the bank. Claire's voice dropped. I think we should contact security. Maya looked directly at her. For what? Until we know where that card came from. You know where it came from? It came from my wallet, beside identification bearing the same name. Claire's cheeks tightened. That does not necessarily prove ownership. The sentence hung in the air. Maya looked down at the blue handbag she had chosen for Evelyn. Something that had represented warmth 20 minutes earlier now sat between them like evidence in a case nobody had established. Mark stepped away and made a quiet phone call. Maya could not hear every word, but she heard enough. Possible fraudulent transaction. Customer refusing to leave. Maya turned toward him. I have never refused to leave. Mark avoided her eyes. We just need everyone to remain calm. Everyone. Maya nearly repeated the word. Nobody else was being questioned. Nobody else had surrendered identification. Nobody else had been asked to prove that the money in their wallet belonged to them. Her phone rang again. This time Maya answered before anyone could object. Thomas, she said. A familiar voice came through the speaker. Maya, I received an unusual verification notice. Are you all right? Maya looked at Claire. Then Mark. I am at the boutique on Westbridge Avenue. They believe my card is stolen. Silence came from the other end for one stunned second. Stay there, Thomas said. I am coming to you. The call ended. Claire folded her arms. That proves nothing. Maya slipped the phone back onto the counter. Then I suppose we wait. Less than 3 minutes later, red and blue lights reflected across the boutique's tall front windows. The patrol car stopped at the curb, its lights painting brief streaks of red and blue across the boutique windows. Several customers turned toward the entrance. Claire seemed relieved. Maya noticed that too. Officer Daniel Mercer entered a moment later, bringing the cold afternoon air with him before the glass door closed behind his back. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to entering a room and immediately becoming its center of authority. Mark hurried toward him. Officer, thank you for coming. Mercer looked past Mark and found Maya standing beside the register. His eyes moved from her face to the black credit card on the counter, then to the blue handbag. What happened? Mark began explaining. He mentioned a suspicious transaction, a possible stolen card, and concerns about fraud. Maya listened carefully. With every sentence, uncertainty disappeared from Mark's version. A verification request became a suspicious transaction. Suspicion became possible theft. Possible theft began sounding almost like fact. That is not what happened, Maya said. Mercer raised one hand without looking at her. I will speak with you in a moment. For minutes earlier, Maya had been a customer. Now she was being instructed to wait while strangers constructed a story about her within hearing distance. Claire handed Mercer the card and Maya's driver's license. He compared the names. Maya Reynolds, he read. Yes. This is your card? Yes. And you were attempting to make this purchase? Yes. Mercer studied the card again. Where did you get it? Maya stared at him. For the first time that afternoon, she wondered whether any answer would actually matter. From my bank. A faint smile touched Mercer's face, but there was no humor in it. You know what I mean. Then ask exactly what you mean. The room became quiet again. Mercer finally looked directly at her. We have been told there may be a fraudulent card involved. No, Maya said. You were told the payment terminal requested verification. Those are not the same thing. Claire stepped forward. I told you the transaction looked wrong. Maya turned toward her. You told me it required verification. Mercer shifted between them. All right. Everyone calmed down. Maya took a slow breath. Officer, my bank has already contacted me. My banking manager is on his way here. You can also call the number printed on the back of the card and verify it yourself. It was the simplest path forward. A telephone call. A few questions. Facts instead of assumptions. Mercer looked at the number on the card, but he did not reach for his phone. People using stolen cards usually have explanations ready. Maya felt the words settle over the room. She noticed the young sales associate near the jewelry display lower her eyes. She noticed Mark suddenly become interested in the register screen. Nobody challenged Mercer. Maya's voice remained controlled. And innocent people usually expect police officers to verify facts. Mercer's jaw tightened. Do not make this difficult. I am asking you to make it accurate. Her phone began ringing on the counter. Thomas Whitmore's name appeared again. Maya reached toward it. Mercer lifted his hand. Leave the phone where it is. That is the bank. You can deal with calls later. Maya looked at him, then at the screen. The ringing stopped. Imagine how quickly certainty can be manufactured when the people with authority stop asking questions. Mercer had Maya's identification. He had the card bearing the same name. He had a banking application showing the transaction. He had a bank manager calling repeatedly. Yet each fact seemed to pass through the room without changing anything. Mercer reached for his radio. Until we sort this out, you are not leaving the store. A murmur moved among the customers. Maya felt embarrassment rising again, but something stronger settled beneath it now. Clarity. This was no longer about proving ownership of a piece of plastic. It was about whether anyone standing around her cared enough to test the accusation they had already accepted. Her phone vibrated once more. Maya glanced toward the screen, then back at Mercer. You should answer when he calls again. Mercer gave a dismissive shake of his head. Nobody from a bank is changing what is happening here. Maya's expression softened, almost with disbelief. You might want to be certain about that. Outside, nearly half a block away, a black sedan turned onto Westbridge Avenue. The black sedan moved steadily through afternoon traffic while, inside the boutique, Officer Daniel Mercer continued treating certainty like evidence. Maya stood beside the register with her driver's license and credit card still in his possession. The banking application remained open on her phone. The confirmed purchase was visible on the screen. Everything needed to slow the situation down was already there, but Mercer seemed more interested in explaining why those details might be unreliable than in checking whether they were true. Let us start again, he said. You came in here alone? Yes. You selected this handbag? Yes. And then the card triggered an alert? Maya looked toward Claire. It requested additional verification. Claire immediately responded, which is unusual. Unusual is not illegal, Maya said. Mercer exhaled impatiently. Nobody said it was. Maya held his gaze. You just told me I cannot leave. That stopped him for half a second. Mark stood behind the register pretending to study the payment terminal, but Maya could see discomfort spreading across his face. The situation had moved beyond store policy now. Every additional minute created another question that somebody would eventually have to answer. Maya pointed calmly toward her phone. The bank sent the verification request at 3:42. I confirmed the purchase less than a minute later. You can see the timestamp. Mercer glanced at the screen. That does not prove the card belongs to you. My driver's license has the same name. Identification can be misused. Then call the issuing bank. Mercer did not answer. Maya continued. The telephone number is printed on the card you are holding. Still nothing. Claire crossed her arms. She also has an old receipt in her wallet. She keeps showing us things like that proves something. Maya turned toward her slowly. It proves I have shopped with this card before. Claire shook her head. Or it proves you came prepared. A few customers exchanged glances. That sentence changed something. Until then, some of them had watched with simple curiosity. Now even they seemed to recognize the impossible standard being created in front of them. If Maya produced nothing, she looked suspicious. If Maya produced evidence, she looked prepared. Every door led to the same conclusion because the conclusion had been chosen first. Maya's phone rang again. Thomas Whitmore. This time the sound seemed louder in the quiet store. Mercer looked at it. Do not answer. He is trying to verify the transaction. I said we will handle that. How? Maya asked. Mercer frowned. Excuse me. How are you handling it? You have not called the bank. You have not rerun the card. You have not asked the bank whether it was reported stolen. You have not even asked Claire what the terminal actually displayed. The young sales associate near the jewelry counter looked toward Mercer. Mark finally raised his head. Claire's confidence flickered. Mercer lowered his voice. You need to watch your tone. Maya remained perfectly still. My tone does not determine whether that card is stolen. Silence. Short. Heavy. Mercer looked down at the card again. For the first time, uncertainty appeared behind his expression, but pride closed over it almost immediately. There are procedures. Then follow them. Maya's words were not loud. They did not need to be. Mark moved closer to the terminal and tapped through the transaction history. His face changed. Claire. She looked at him. What? The message says cardholder verification required. Claire swallowed. That is what I said. No, Maya replied. You told the officer there might be a stolen card. Claire looked away. Mercer glanced toward Mark. Does the system say stolen? Mark hesitated. Not exactly. 2 words. That was all it took for the first crack to appear in the story everyone had accepted. Not exactly. Maya felt no satisfaction. Only exhaustion. Her phone stopped ringing, leaving the boutique quiet again. Then a new notification appeared on the screen. A message from Thomas. Maya read it silently. I am almost there. Mercer could not see the message, but he saw something change in Maya's eyes. Her urgency disappeared. She was no longer trying to convince him. You seem pretty confident, he said. Maya locked her phone and placed it carefully on the counter. I was confident when I walked in. Outside, the black sedan slowed near the curb. Maya looked through the front windows and recognized it immediately. She turned back toward Mercer. You still have time to make one telephone call. Mercer reached toward his radio instead. Mercer pressed the button on his radio, but before he spoke, Maya asked one question. What exactly are you reporting? His thumb remained over the microphone. A suspected fraudulent transaction. Based on what? Mercer looked at her. We have already been through this. No, Maya said quietly. We have been through assumptions. I am asking for the fact that turned a verification request into suspected theft. Claire shifted beside the register. Mark stared at the terminal. No one answered. The silence was different now. Earlier, it had belonged to Maya, the woman everyone expected to explain herself. Now it belonged to the people who had accused her. Mercer lowered the radio slightly. The store contacted police because they had concerns. And when you arrived, you received my identification. You saw the matching name. You saw the banking notification. You heard that my banking manager was calling. Mark just confirmed that the terminal never said the card was stolen. Mercer's expression tightened. That does not automatically clear everything. Maya nodded once. Then verify it. 3 simple words. Nothing dramatic. Nothing angry. Yet they seemed to fill every corner of the boutique. The older couple near the handbag display had stopped pretending not to listen. The young sales associate stood motionless. Even Claire seemed less certain than she had 5 minutes earlier. Mercer looked toward the entrance, then back at Maya. For now, you need to remain here while I determine what happened. Maya glanced through the tall front windows. The black sedan had stopped at the curb. That should not take much longer. Mercer followed her gaze, but saw only afternoon traffic and pedestrians moving along Westbridge Avenue. You expecting somebody? I told you. My banking manager. Mercer gave a small shake of his head. Bank managers do not usually leave their offices over a declined purchase. It was not declined. Mark spoke before Maya could. His voice was cautious. Officer, she is correct. The transaction is pending verification. Mercer turned toward him. You told dispatch there was possible fraud. Mark looked at Claire. Claire immediately said, because the card triggered the system. Verification, Maya reminded her. Claire's face reddened. I was protecting the store. Maya studied her for a moment. From what? Claire said nothing. That question seemed to expose the entire afternoon more clearly than any argument could have. Maya had walked into the store, selected merchandise, presented a card bearing her name, confirmed the purchase through her bank, produced identification, and remained cooperative. Somewhere between those ordinary actions, Claire had decided there was something to protect the store from. And once that decision had been made, every ordinary detail had been forced to fit it. Maya's phone vibrated. A message appeared. I am outside. She read it and placed the phone back on the counter. Mercer noticed her calm expression. What did he say? He is here. For the first time, Mercer looked uncertain. Claire turned toward the windows. Mark straightened his jacket. The atmosphere shifted almost invisibly, as though everyone sensed that something beyond their control had finally reached the door. Mercer picked up Maya's credit card again. Before anyone comes in, I need you to understand that I am still conducting an investigation. Then investigate, Maya said. Do not guess. Mercer stared at her. His pride seemed to be fighting with the evidence in front of him. Then he made a decision. Turn around for me. The room went still. Maya did not move. Why? I am temporarily detaining you while this is sorted out. A woman near the entrance whispered. For a credit card? Mercer heard her, but did not respond. Maya's heartbeat quickened, yet her voice remained steady. You have not established that a crime occurred. Ma'am, cooperate. Maya slowly placed her hands where he instructed. There was no struggle, no raised voice, only the quiet metallic click of restraints closing around her wrists. The sound was small, almost delicate, but inside that boutique it seemed enormous. Claire looked away. Mark's face lost its color. Maya closed her eyes for one brief second, thinking of her mother, the blue handbag, the birthday dinner waiting 12 miles away, and how quickly an ordinary afternoon had been transformed by people who had never bothered to confirm the accusation they were willing to act upon. Then another sound broke the silence. The soft chime above the boutique entrance. Everyone turned. Thomas Whitmore stepped inside wearing a navy overcoat, his expression composed until his eyes found Maya. Then he saw her restrained hands. His face changed. He looked at Mercer. He looked at Claire. He looked at Mark. And in a voice so controlled that it carried more weight than shouting ever could, he asked, Who authorized this? Thomas Whitmore did not move farther into the boutique. For several seconds, he simply stood beneath the warm lights near the entrance, staring at Maya's restrained hands as if he needed to make certain he was seeing the situation correctly. The room had become so quiet that the soft music overhead suddenly sounded inappropriate. Mercer turned toward him. Sir, this is an active police matter. Please remain near the entrance. Thomas looked at Mercer, then at the credit card still resting beside Maya's driver's license. I asked who authorized this. Mercer straightened. And who are you? Thomas reached slowly into his coat and removed a leather card holder. Thomas Whitmore, Senior Manager for Private Banking at First Commonwealth Bank. He presented his identification without drama. Mercer studied it, and something changed behind his eyes. Not fear. Not yet. Recognition that the stranger who had just walked through the door was connected to the one fact he had repeatedly refused to verify. Thomas turned toward Maya. His voice softened immediately. Dr. Reynolds, are you all right? Claire's head lifted. Mark looked from Thomas to Maya. Mercer glanced down at Maya's driver's license as though the name printed there had suddenly acquired a different meaning. I am fine, Maya said. I would prefer to have these removed. Thomas faced Mercer again. Why is my client being detained? There was a suspected fraudulent transaction. Was the card reported stolen? Mercer hesitated. That is what we are determining. Thomas's expression remained composed. That was not my question. Another silence. Thomas stepped toward the counter and looked at the terminal without touching anything. Was this card reported stolen? Mark cleared his throat. The system requested additional cardholder verification. Thomas nodded. Correct. Claire spoke quickly. But the transaction was unusual, and we had concerns. Thomas looked at her. Concerns are not a stolen card report. Claire's lips parted, but nothing followed. Thomas turned back to Mercer. Dr. Reynolds confirmed the transaction through our secure banking application at 3:43 this afternoon. Our fraud system recorded that confirmation. I personally called her immediately afterward because the purchase occurred at a merchant she does not regularly use. Mercer's face became more guarded. That still does not explain why you came here yourself. Because when I reached Dr. Reynolds, she told me that store employees were accusing her of using a stolen card. Thomas paused. I checked the account before leaving my office. Every person near the register seemed to lean into the silence. The account is active. The card is valid. The transaction is authorized. There is no theft report, no fraud report, and no indication that Dr. Reynolds is using anyone else's account. Claire stared at the floor. Mark closed his eyes briefly. Mercer looked at the card in his hand. Maya watched him carefully. This was the moment she had asked him to create for himself nearly 10 minutes earlier. One telephone call could have done it. One verification. One willingness to test an accusation before acting on it. "Officer," Thomas said, "you are holding a valid credit card issued to the woman standing in front of you. Her government identification matches our records. Our secure application confirmed the purchase. What exactly is the basis for continuing to detain her?" Mercer looked toward Mark. The store called this in as possible fraud. Mark immediately raised both hands slightly. "We reported a concern. We did not confirm fraud." Claire looked at him in disbelief. "Mark, you were standing right here. I know where I was." Their certainty was beginning to fracture, each person suddenly measuring the distance between what had actually happened and what they might later claim had happened. Maya finally spoke. "Officer Mercer." He turned toward her. "Remove them, please." His eyes moved around the boutique. Customers were watching. Employees were watching. Thomas was watching. More importantly, the small camera mounted above the register had been watching from the beginning. Mercer seemed to notice it for the first time. He released the restraints. Maya brought her hands forward and calmly adjusted the sleeve of her coat. She did not celebrate. She did not smile. Thomas looked at her with quiet concern. "Dr. Reynolds, I am deeply sorry." Maya shook her head gently. "You did what they should have done. You checked." Thomas turned toward the register. "There is something else everyone here needs to understand." Mercer's expression tightened again. Thomas removed his phone and opened the secure account record. The verification request was generated because of the purchase amount and location. Nothing more. He looked directly at Claire. At no point did the bank identify this card as stolen. The words landed slowly. Maya looked at Mercer. "So where did that accusation come from?" Nobody answered. For several seconds, the question remained suspended in the boutique with nowhere to hide. Claire looked at Mark. Mark looked at Officer Mercer. Mercer looked down at Maya's credit card as though the answer might somehow be printed beneath her name. Thomas Whitmore waited. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Who first described the card as stolen?" he asked. Mark swallowed. Claire raised the concern. Claire immediately turned toward him. "I said something was wrong with the transaction." "No," Maya said calmly. "You said the card might be stolen." Claire's expression tightened. "Because the system flagged it." Thomas shook his head. "The system requested verification. That distinction matters." Mercer placed the card on the counter. "The store reported possible fraud. I responded to the information I was given." Maya looked directly at him. "And then I gave you new information." Mercer said nothing. "My identification matched the card. My banking application showed the transaction. The bank called repeatedly. Mark read the actual terminal message to you. I asked you to call the number on the back of the card." Her voice never rose, but each fact seemed louder than the one before it. "You had opportunities to verify what happened." Mercer's eyes moved toward the ceiling camera. Thomas noticed. "Does that camera record the register area?" Mark followed his gaze. "Yes." "With audio?" "I believe so." Claire suddenly stepped forward. "We cannot just show customers security footage." Thomas looked at her. "Then preserve it." The simplicity of the statement made Claire stop. Thomas continued. "Do not erase it, overwrite it, or allow it to disappear through routine retention. Preserve the transaction record as well." Mercer's hand moved toward his body camera almost unconsciously. Maya saw that too. "And your camera?" she said. Mercer looked at her. "What about it?" "Preserve that recording." The boutique seemed colder now, although nothing about the temperature had changed. Minutes earlier, Maya had been the person expected to produce proof. Now proof surrounded everyone else. The register had timestamps. The banking system had timestamps. The store had cameras. Mercer had a body camera. Maya's phone contained the verification notification and Thomas's unanswered calls. Truth had been quietly keeping records while people were busy making assumptions. Mark stepped behind the counter and opened the transaction log again. 342, he said. Verification requested. Thomas checked his phone. Dr. Reynolds confirmed at 3:43. Mark scrolled farther. There was no stolen card notification. Claire stared at the screen. I thought that was what the message meant. Maya turned toward her. Did you think that before or after you looked at me? Claire's face went still. No one laughed. No one whispered. Even Mercer looked away. Maya continued. I watched another customer make a large purchase before me. She was treated like a customer. When my transaction required one extra step, I became a suspect. Claire's voice weakened. I was trying to protect the business. Protection requires facts, Thomas said. Otherwise it becomes something else. Mercer reached for his radio again, but this time his tone was different. He requested a supervisor. No accusation. No certainty. Just a request for someone senior to respond. Maya listened and understood the reversal for what it was. She did not need Mercer humiliated. She needed the record to become accurate. 10 minutes later, Sergeant Laura Bennett entered the boutique. Mercer quietly explained what had happened. Bennett listened without interruption, then spoke separately with Mark, Claire, Thomas, and Maya. She reviewed the terminal message. She confirmed the card had never been reported stolen. Then she looked toward the security camera and asked Mark to preserve the footage. Finally, she turned to Mercer. You detained her after learning the terminal only requested verification? Mercer hesitated. I believed further investigation was necessary. Bennett's expression remained professional. Then the question will be whether the investigation followed the facts available to you. Maya heard those words and felt something inside her finally loosen. Not because punishment had arrived. It had not. Not because an apology could erase the afternoon. It could not. But because the question had changed. Nobody was asking whether Maya belonged with the card anymore. They were asking why people with every opportunity to discover the truth had chosen suspicion first. Thomas picked up Maya's credit card and handed it back to her. This was yours the entire time. Maya slipped it carefully into her wallet. I know, she said. Then she looked at Mercer, Claire, and the camera above them. Now the record will know too. By the time Sergeant Laura Bennett finished collecting the basic facts, the boutique no longer felt like the same place Maya had entered less than an hour earlier. The warm lights were unchanged. The marble floors still reflected the displays. The blue handbag still rested near the register. But the certainty that had once surrounded Maya was gone. In its place was something quieter and far more uncomfortable: accountability. Bennett handed Maya a card containing the incident information and explained that the department would review Mercer's body camera recording along with the store footage. Mark had already instructed the company's security office to preserve every camera angle covering the register and entrance. Thomas had saved the banking records showing exactly when the verification request appeared, when Maya approved the transaction, and when he began calling her. Minute by minute, the afternoon had documented itself. Mercer stood several feet away, speaking quietly with Bennett. His confidence had faded into careful answers. Claire remained behind the counter, no longer looking at Maya unless Maya spoke directly to her. Dr. Reynolds, Mark finally said, I apologize for how this was handled. Maya studied him. What exactly are you apologizing for? Mark hesitated. It was an uncomfortable question because a vague apology was easy. Naming the failure was harder. For allowing a verification issue to become an accusation before we had evidence. Maya nodded slowly. That matters. Claire looked up. I never intended for any of this to happen. Maya turned toward her. Intent is important. So is what you do after your assumptions are challenged. Claire's eyes lowered. Maya did not need her humiliation. She did not need anyone begging for forgiveness. What she wanted was much simpler and much harder. She wanted the next person to be treated differently. Preserve the footage, Maya said. Document what happened accurately. Review the verification procedure with your staff. And make sure the next customer does not have to prove the same fact 5 different ways before somebody decides to believe the first one. Mark nodded. We will. Maya looked toward Bennett. And I want the police report to reflect that the bank never reported the card stolen. Bennett answered immediately. It will. Mercer heard her. His eyes met Maya's for the first time since Thomas arrived. Ms. Reynolds, he began, then stopped. Maya waited. I should have verified the information sooner. There it was. Not a dramatic confession. Not a perfect apology. Just the first honest sentence he had offered her all afternoon. Maya held his gaze. You kept asking me to prove the card was mine. Mercer said nothing. You never stopped to prove the accusation was true. The words did not need anger behind them. The truth carried enough weight on its own. Thomas stood quietly beside her. After a moment, he glanced at the blue handbag. Do you still want it? Maya followed his eyes. For the first time in what felt like hours, she remembered why she had come. Her mother, Evelyn. 7 o'clock. A birthday dinner waiting 12 miles away. Maya walked back to the counter and touched the blue leather gently. Claire stepped toward the register, uncertain. We can offer it to you at no charge. Maya shook her head. No, Claire looked surprised. Maya removed the same black credit card from her wallet. I came here to buy my mother a birthday gift. I am going to buy my mother a birthday gift. Mark processed the transaction himself. The terminal paused for a moment, then displayed the approval. A tiny sound followed. Ordinary. Almost forgettable. Yet everyone near the counter heard it. Mark placed the receipt beside the handbag. Maya signed, took the bag, and slipped her card back into her wallet. She had not purchased it to prove she could afford it. She had purchased it because she refused to let someone else's suspicion rewrite the meaning of her day. Thomas walked with her toward the entrance. Before leaving, Maya looked back once. Claire stood silently behind the register. Bennett was speaking with Mercer beneath the camera that had recorded everything. Maya opened the door, and cool afternoon air touched her face. The city moved around her as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Cars passed. Pedestrians crossed Westbridge Avenue. Somewhere ahead, her mother was probably wondering whether Maya would arrive late again. Maya smiled and held the gift a little closer. Behind her, a badge, a store policy, and an accusation were being examined against a record that did not care about assumptions. Mercer had entered believing authority gave him the right to decide who deserved suspicion. By the time Maya walked away, he was beginning to understand something far more important. Authority did not give him less reason to verify the truth. It gave him more.